Hey, thanks for being here. I just want to say Todd just left so I can talk about him. But it's so great to for the last couple weeks, some old friends back around, and it's just fun to catch up and good for me to not forget that influence and friendship and thoughts and prayers and energy continues to go on, whether or not you're in close quarters or not, whether or not you're able to talk all the time or not. And that is a little bit of how our life is. I get on the internet every day like everybody else, and I know what's happening, but it's a very different thing to know what's happening in somebody's life, and to interact and to keep up. And it's cool to see Todd today. Todd was one of Denise and Webb's son, Todd. So y'all know Denise and Webb. They'll come in like 5 minutes from now. It's gonna be late. But Denise and Webb are like the oldest members of our church. Before I was here, they were here, and they've come from Starkville for a long time. And Todd was like, they called him Rock Star Todd. He still looks the same way they did like 20 years ago. But he was like going and cutting records and stuff in Los Angeles and stuff. He was just always dripping with cool, and everybody wanted to be like him. Anyway, so Todd is we lived together for a little while right when I was starting early on in this church, and we were good friends. And then we lived with Charles Hayden, who was an elder of our church, and we lived with he and his wife and kids for a month. And Charles was the psychiatrist, so he would counsel us and stuff all the time. So we have all these great memories of starting our lives together. And Todd can't sit still, so he couldn't stay for service. But anyway, it was good to see him. And then John Jones in the house. What up, John Jones? Just want to shout out to everybody loves John. And he's here in the house today. And Miss Nancy is here. Miss Nancy came several years ago back in the house. She's an artist and prolific and interesting, and from the West Coast, always has a great sunny perspective on everything. Get a chance to talk to Nancy, please do. And then William Lejeune and his wife were here last week, and I hadn't seen William in like a long time, and it was just great to see him. Just good to see him. It's just good to see people doing well and coming back around and catching up on various things. One of the cool things about church, if we were a First Baptist or some sort of established church that had an endowment, and like that would happen. People would come back. If I went down to Meridian to my home church, I'd see all these people I hadn't seen in a long time, and it would be a great time to catch up and to see how things are and where things have been. And so church is very social. I don't think we give enough credit for how social church is and how important it is. I always feel bad about starting the service. We're all here for the service, but we're also here to see one another and to talk and to catch up and to check in. And if one of us is not doing good, then this is the time to talk about that. And maybe we can pray, or maybe we can just listen to one another. And so there is an exchange of emotions that's almost a necessary part of a Christian fellowship. And so when it says don't forsake the assembly of the brethren, there's a lot of things that happen with that. And look, we're it's just okay to say, but most people probably go to church to see other people. Okay. And maybe not us so much. There's not as many of us to see, but most of these big churches, people are going to see. That's why we dress nice and all. And so it is a part of it. It is a very social thing. And just for the record, church is 100% social because it's 100% people. And the church is made up of people. And so if the larger society is suffering, then the church is probably suffering. If there's economic trouble across the country, there's probably economic trouble in the church. Why? Because church is just a reflection of the larger society, which is the people. We're just people. And so all of the needs and all of the situations for the world is also a part of like what the church needs as well. And the interesting thing and the good thing, the unique thing about the church, if you look at all the spheres of influence, like all the sectors of society, church is one of the only things that touches all of the sectors of society. In this room right now, there's engineers, there's teachers, there's students, there are architects, right? Like you all know who you are. There's healthcare professionals. There are white collar and blue collar. There's all kinds. It takes all kinds, and we're a part of all of them. And so when we go out again, like when we are centrifuged out into the larger society, the church is kind of the weird thing that's kind of in the middle of all of it. And so it is a social organism, a beautiful thing that God has made, and it is to influence all those sectors of society. And so we come this is a well for us. We come to get some new stuff, to go back out so that we can influence people in regular society. I was talking to a friend of mine this week, and he was just going over what C.S. Lewis said once upon a time, which is, or Martin Luther, or all the great theologians, is that as Christians, we don't need to create Christian subcultures. We don't need to create Christian widgets and gadgets. We don't need to create Christian movies. Like there's this Pure Flix or something now, like my friend, one of my friends does Pure Flix. I was like, what is Pure Flix? Is it where they like get all the cuss words out? They're like, no. It's where they just do only programming. That's only Christian-based programming. So it's just Pure Flix. So you don't get any of this stuff from the world. It's just Christian programming. And that's okay, I guess. But you're not going to see any Tom Cruise. I mean, and it's like, did God want us to make an alternative culture so that we just don't ever have to rub shoulders with the world? Or are we supposed to go out and be Christians? Like, do I need to go make Christian music and therefore make my Christian signature, and it's Christian, it's labeled Christian? Or do I just need to be a Christian? And the weird contrast that creates will be enough to influence. Christians are influential not because they're relevant, but because they're so opposite of what is relevant that it becomes relevant. Does that make sense? So instead of looking just like the world and it somehow becomes relevant because of MC Hammer, it's like JC Hammer. You know what I mean? Or something dumb. It's like there's this kind of music, and then Christians come in and do something that's so countercultural and bizarre, and it's so swimming against the grain and the stream that people are like, what is that? I don't even understand how you could, somebody just spit in your face and you're going to turn the other cheek. Nobody does that. What's wrong with you? Oh, we're trying to love, I'm trying to follow Christ, and it doesn't matter. Man, it's going to have an influence. It's going to have an impact. So if you're trying to be relevant, trying to be like all this weird stuff, you just end up feeding into the same game. But if you go countercultural and you become radical, at least, and radical just means to go back to the root. It comes from the same word as radish. It just means root, to go down to the roots. I mean, from the standpoint of Christianity's always been radical. And Tony Campolo says this, at the point that it ceased to be radical, it ceased to be Christianity, because Jesus is saying that we have to take up the whole cross and follow him all the way. So if you want to come after me, you have to deny yourself. It's like he puts all these things in place to where you can't just like ho-hum go along with it. You have to like really commit, and you have to go all in and take some radical requirements. He's even like walking around with people. He says, you have to eat my flesh and drink my blood. And people are like, this is a hard saying. Who can do this? I can't do this. This is weird stuff. What are you talking about? He's like, it is what it is. And a lot of people leave him. And so it is radical. It is countercultural. And it is not of the stuff of the world. So if you want to do stuff that nobody's doing, you can't be doing what everybody else is doing. And if you want to reach people nobody's reaching, you can't do the stuff that everybody's doing. And if you do the stuff that everybody's doing, then you can't do the stuff that nobody's doing to reach the people nobody's reaching. I mean, it's just dumb, sort of logic that we get there. But I mean, I think a lot of times we're looking to make our mark, and we're looking to have influence. And this is a human thing where we want to be known. We want I'm done with my life. I want my life to have mattered. I want to have had some contribution. And so we're looking for those things. And so we're looking for, how do I gain the most traction? I want traction in this time. I need traction. And even the best of us, like my friend, I'll just keep talking about him a little bit again because he's not here. He's so good, by the way. I could talk about it. That guy just left us as talented as anybody I've ever met. Like, went and studied in Scotland. Like, can draw a picture with his opposite hand on the size of that canvas in an hour, and you'd be like, wow, that's worth thousands of dollars. Like, he's so good. Like, Butch Vig and the people that produced Nirvana, like, went in and took his songs, and famous people in the Nashville country world want that guy's songs. He's in LSU getting a doctorate, and he hates Trump, and he's totally left-leaning, like whatever. He's using all his political, like he's using all of his artist stuff to do this political stuff. He's all into social activism, but he wants to make traction. And for good reasons. He's not a bad person. He wants to make traction, and he's doing it out of his beliefs, out of his convictions. Man, that's so good. There's nothing wrong with doing that. And enough about him, but he is also Christian, but it's not very popular to be Christian in those circles, where there's circles of academia, where there's circles of just music. Go to Nashville, you become a liberal like automatically. All my friends that went to Nashville, they don't like Mississippi anymore. They don't like any people from Mississippi. They don't like Christians or God, and they've all turned liberal. I don't know. They moved to Nashville. That's all that happened. And not to get into that, but he is wanting to be relevant. We're all wanting to be relevant. It seems like we have to get in this rat race in order to be relevant. Like, you're going to have to get into the YouTube algorithms, or you're going to have to like sell your soul at the crossroads to get into some relevancy. Or we're going to have to go to Hollywood, or we're going to have to go to the centers of like all epicenters of like culture in order to find some relevant thing. But friends, Christianity is so irrelevant. Like, it's so countercultural and so relevant, it doesn't seem relevant. It's forgotten about text. These are old themes that have been passed down generation to generation, but they're not being paid attention to. And I don't know if it's that people don't have the time. They think it's old and archaic. They think it's outdated. I think a lot of it's just fast food culture, where we just, come on, give it to me quick so I can move on. Like, don't bore us, get to the chorus. Like, I don't want to listen to the whole album. I want to listen to one song. I don't want to listen to the hook song over and over again until I'm tired of it, and then I want to listen to a new one. And so there's a temporary sort of like where we're just spitting through the machine, like the news cycle. It's just coming and going, and there's that kind of stuff. But like in the rat race of traction and popularity and making our mark, maybe to follow Jesus, maybe one of the hardest things, to die to self, maybe one of the hardest things, but maybe one of the most relevant and powerful things that could ever happen. And if you're to take Joseph Campbell, you're to take some of these people that look at a very bird's eye view of all of it, and not to undo the faith or anything, but what is the goal of all creation, and what is the development of human beings? It is to become the hero of our own story. It is to somehow figure out our quest, and to somehow face the hard issues, and to somehow overcome the stuff in our lives that we have to overcome. And that doesn't always happen just because I read the scripture. I have to look at my own heart. There's a scripture in James right here that speaks to this very thing. And John will put it up here. It's not one that's that fun to talk about or preach about. It's one of those things that we know from a long way off. We're like, I know. But a lot of times we follow Jesus in the ways that we want to, and we'll slide by the ways that we don't want to. And we'll use him for what he's good at getting us, and we'll just kind of stay away from some of the other stuff. And so this is a good example of this. And I just want you to imagine, okay, just imagine, I don't know. Well, we don't have to imagine anything. Let's just look at it. Let's see. So it says, what good is it, my brothers and sisters, if someone claims to have faith but has no deeds? Can such faith save him? Now, he's talking about salvific faith, man. Like, and this is what is in the scripture, is faith like that saves you, okay? Can that faith save you? Is faith about salvation? Is salvation of faith? Suppose a brother or sister is without clothes and daily food, and one of us good-meaning people says, go in peace, keep warm and be well fed, but does nothing about their physical needs. What good is that? In the same way, faith by itself, if it is not accompanied by action, it is dead. It is dead. But someone will say, you have faith, I have deeds. Show me your faith without deeds, and I'll show you my faith by my deeds. So James, just like always, is cutting it like a buck knife, saying you got to have both. You got to have both. A lot of times, I think what happens is we're following Jesus in a way, but we're hoping that he's going to get us some stuff maybe. We're hoping that he's going to help us in some ways. But really, we're doing all that in our heart. We're working that stuff out in our feelings. We're working that stuff out in the emotions of our coming and going, and we're not actualizing any of it. We're not doing any of it. And I think that we expect the most important parts of our faith to sort of be translated into these bigger themes and stuff like when we die. But it might not be that way. How much will our faith save us today? If it informs our action and informs our life, then it will save us. It'll do a lot of good. If becoming a Christian at 15, but your life trajectory doesn't change for the next 60 years, then what did the faith do? What did the faith do? If thinking good feelings and thoughts is all that's required, then we didn't need it. It didn't do anything. It never has, it never can, it never will. But all the time we're thinking this way, friends. We're thinking this way. I can't tell you how much energy is given to thinking about ideas, thinking about good things I could do for you. There was a guy that died in the hospital a couple weeks ago. I went to his funeral. I thought of going and seeing him 10 times. I thought of the conversations that we would have. I thought about the stuff that I would say, the history we had together. But I just don't like pain. And so I just didn't go. And he died. So I went to his funeral. But does he care? I mean, maybe he's looking down and he saw I went to his funeral. Maybe we don't care. Who knows? I don't know. But my thoughts were there. My heart was good. I should have done a lot more than just think about doing it. But guess what I did? I rewarded myself for those thoughts. I thought, not this is unconsciously, but I thought, it's the thought that counts. I mean, I really do love Victor because I wouldn't care so much about going and seeing him. And I think we somehow do this. I think we somehow trick ourselves into believing that our thoughts and stuff are the reality. I think we sort of say, well, I did think about doing that. And it's almost like we get the good feelings from it in the thought process, but we never follow it out into actuality. So we never really, it's one of those weird things. They say that oxytocin is that way, one of the chemicals that's released in your brain. I think it's oxytocin. One of the 4 or 5 chemicals that's released in your brain. It's like it's like dopamine and it's like those kinds of things. And I'm getting all off because I'm not a scientist. But I think, is it oxytocin? One of them is this love drug. It's like this love chemical, and it's when you see somebody doing something good, it releases it. Is that the right one?
I think it's serotonin.
No, it's not serotonin. It's not dopamine. It's not serotonin. There's 4 or 5 of them. They all are really similar. Look it up, though. Thank you for saying something, Catherine. You're so awesome. Dopamine is like a painkiller. Serotonin is like 4 or 5, but oxytocin is like it's like a love chemical where you see somebody do something good, it releases it. So if I see John pick up somebody's books when they dropped them all over the floor, it's like, oh, John stopped and picked up their books. Good guy. Well, John gets oxytocin, they get oxytocin, and I get oxytocin just by witnessing the good deed. So it's a weird, none of the rest of them work that way. That's the only one that works that way. There's a guy named Simon Sinek that talks about this a lot. That's where I got it from. I'll give you guys the link because he's a lot smarter than me. 5 brain chemicals. And this is a pretty cool thing because you think that you drink alcohol or like you eat food and like, oh, the steak, the protein, or the alcohol. It's all 4 or 5 chemicals, and those things affect those chemicals. So it kind of takes all the guesswork and weirdness out of like your chemical feelings because it's only 4 or 5 chemicals that do everything. But oxytocin is the weird one that can be affected even by somebody else from a distance. So Chicken Soup for the Soul is real. Warm and Fuzzies from Lifetime Channel is real. You feel that, and you feel good from it. You're borrowing all those emotions. You're just not really having to do anything to get it. That's why we like it. And oxytocin is one of those good ones because it's like the love, feel-good, weird one. So like dopamine and stuff, you can get it from eating and stuff, but you just can't get it from that just by seeing somebody do something good. Oxytocin is that way. I think that our faith and actions thing is similar. I think we think about it. We're like, God, that would be so good. Oh, that would be so heartwarming. Oh, that would be the right thing to do. And we'll feel all those feelings for it. And then we're moving on so quick that we're like, all right. And we don't even follow it out. And what good would that do? Now, take another example. Because this is small stuff. Like, I think a lot about people. Like, I think, man, I should call up Will Porter. Hadn't talked to him in a while. He lives in Budapest. I wonder how he is. Man, I had this unction. No, nobody gave me the unction. I had this unction. Maybe I should call him. Maybe I should do that. I'm not going to do that. But how many times when we have done something like that, they're like, man, you don't know how important it was you called. Like, I was sitting here just sucking. It happens a lot. So we need to follow through. We need to follow through. I think a lot of stuff goes through my mind and I spit it out as me or not important. I don't follow up with it. I don't consider all that stuff. I kind of rinse it for its good feelings of what a good idea, Bo, that could be a good idea, but I don't do it. I don't do it. Writing a thank you note, writing a handwritten note is a lost art. It's a lost art, friends. If you want to do something good for somebody these days, write them a handwritten note. It's better than an email. It's better than a text message. It takes not much longer. Why does it matter so much more? Because there was thoughts and there was details and there was focus on that. So if you think about writing somebody a handwritten note, it will never matter. If a tree falls in the woods, what good is it? But if you wrote them one, it would matter. I went into Cadence Bank about 18 years ago to get a loan. Now, at the time, Al was the chairman of Cadence Bank. He owned it. Remember Al Puckett? He owned it. People didn't know that, but I knew that. So I went in with my guns loaded. I need to talk to the head of the loans department. I go in there and I'm like, Al sent me. Al sent me. I don't have any credit, but Al sent me here. And he's like, you know Al? And I was like, yeah. And this guy says, I want to show you something. He goes over to his file cabinet. Al would be embarrassed if I said this. He pulls out this thing and he pulls out these notes. He's like, look at this. He's like, my first week as a branch manager of this bank 27 years ago in Aberdeen, Mississippi. And Al wrote me this note my first week encouraging me. He's like, and I kept it. I've never forgotten it. Never forgotten it. He's like, and I got married. And he's like, look at this. This nice, neat handwriting. Al Puckett. He's like, he didn't have to write me this note. Congratulate me and get married. He had about 4 notes. He's like, I've kept all these throughout my career. He's like, and I try to write people notes now because of Al. He's like, okay, so you want a loan. It wasn't about the loan. It doesn't matter anything. It didn't matter. That, like, how much time did it take Al to do that? I mean, probably 10 or 12 minutes total. It changed this man's life. It changed how he felt about things. So it really did matter to write that letter. It really did matter to follow out those thoughts. It really does matter to pay attention enough to have the wherewithal to consider this stuff because it might be the dumbest and impractical thing ever to take a piece of cardboard and to find an ink pen and to write it down and to pay the $1.78 now, whatever it costs to get, and to wait 2 days for it to go to Jackson and come back to risk the potential of it being lost in the mail, the stamps being their own denomination, whatever, just for somebody to know that you know that they care, that you care, or that they're struggling, or anything. It just seems irrelevant. It seems pointless. It seems like it doesn't matter. But it ends up being and mattering more than anything else. And so I wonder about this because we might be tricking ourselves. For instance, Chan says this, and he's right. He says that his daughter needs to clean her room. It's like one of the only things you have to do for kids. It's like, come on, go clean your room. But think about what Christians do. We say that we do this spiritual work in our hearts, but not in our actual lives. We're working it out in our hearts. But that doesn't work in any aspect of our lives. Does it? You can't go off to Vietnam in your heart. You can't sign the dotted line in your heart. You can't be married just in your heart. You can't be committed. I mean, you can and you can't. But if the daughter comes out and she says, I clean the room in my heart, and you say, no, but you have to really do it. You see, it's not enough to clean your room in your heart. And it's no wonder people think that we're foolish because we're talking like this. And so, like, God sees our hearts. He knows our hearts. And our hearts, there's a lot about our hearts. Guard your heart from it, the well springs of life come, and love the Lord your God with all your heart. And there's a lot about the heart. And everything else can follow suit if the heart is there. But I think that we ought to... I just wonder how much is on the cutting room floor of our hearts. Like, if you guys are honest, how much downtime you have with yourself, like, it's like anything else. Like 90% is going to the cutting room floor, isn't it? Like, you're only getting like 10% of what I'm saying. I think I am too, because there's 90% of me that's like, that I don't even know, you know? And so I really think that, yeah, like there's a lot left on the cutting room floor of our hearts. The real work will be to decide what is and is not important, right? Not even what's really relevant, but what is and is not important. Because if it is important, it will be relevant. If it is important, a little note like that will be relevant. If it is important, a kind gesture, a kind word will be important. These action points will matter. But just in the realm of our hearts, I don't really think that any of it matters. Do you? Like, even and I'm dealing with this myself, and we'll quit right here, but I had a fraternity buddy that died this last week, and I didn't even know him very well. I got the stomach bug, and I spent all night in gut-wrenching pain, and I think it got to my emotions a little bit. But I saw this picture of him on Facebook, and I can't even find it anymore, but he was kind of like sitting on a stool like this, maybe one of those hospital walkers, you know? He's sitting down, and his wife is standing up, and he was just hugging her. And this was like last week, right before he died. He'd been battling cancer for 4 years. But it really bothered me, because it was just, if you were terminal or you're in that situation, then stuff really matters all of a sudden. You're not playing games the same way. You're not telling people a bunch of bullshit. You know what I mean? Like, you're not there for that anymore. And if you're going to Disney, you're going all in. You're going to Disney. And if you're going to eat this meal and you have the strength to eat this meal, then you're going to eat that meal in like full 100% presence, right? And all of the little acts and all of the little words and everything gets really like amplified, and it really, really matters more than anything else. And I don't know, but it really did. It has made this, it has brought this line in me that just says, man, like the realm of idea and ideation is everybody's realm. And this realm of possibility and stuff we all share. But it is people that put one foot in front of the other and do things. Steve Jobs said, artists ship. It's a great famous quote. You can look it up. It's very short. It's like Jesus wept. Real artists ship. He allegedly went all through Apple's campus, mad, throwing stuff around. Artists ship. What was he saying? We got to get it out the door. It doesn't make any difference. If it doesn't actualize, then what did it do? Right? And this is what James is saying. We have fathoms in books and books. And I've got a whole room of books. I've read like half of them. All right? I got like 20 Bibles. What good is it? It won't matter what I did and did not do. It won't matter what I said and didn't say. It won't matter what you heard and didn't hear from me. It won't matter my conduct to you. It won't matter the feeling that you got around me. It won't matter the themes that I reminded you of over and over again, the things that I represented to you somehow. It won't be in the realm of it may be in the realm of your thoughts, but it'll only be my words and my actual things that you'll be able to use to judge and to come up with some version of me and my influence in your life. And so, friends, I do think that we've got work to do as Christians. It is a lot of thinking. It is a lot of, it's just like politics. It's like conflict management. It's like, man, there's a gazillion things to think about here. It's not that easy, okay? And so we have to think about all this. But at some point in the realm of thinking, we have to say, okay, done enough research, done enough thinking, done enough talking. In fact, there's a lot of books that are action-oriented books. By Stephen Pressfield's The War of Art, Do the Work, a bunch of famous books. People made a lot of money just telling people, all right, you get. Well, he'll give you 1 week of research. You get to read one book. That's it. After that, no more research. You have to go do the work. You have to go do the work. If you want to go write, go write. Go read Stephen King's On Writing. He says just do 500 words a day. The way that he writes books is 3 months, 4 months of doing 500 words every day. That's all he does. It's methodical. It's like you got words, they're like nails, and you got sentences, they're like hammers. And he's like, you got a nail and hammer and some wood. He's like, you can build a box, you can build a table, you can build a house, you can build an apartment building. It's like it's the same stuff. It's methodical. And man, Stephen King had it all in his head, but he started to actually have to write it. You have to put it down. We are supposed to be creative. We're spiritually minded, friends. We have all of this stuff in us. I think God has made this a massive, awesome computer so that we can think a lot and do a lot. But I'm the worst one at it, friends. I'll think my way right into doing nothing. I will think my way right into nothing's a good option. Think my way into everybody is a disaster. The world's a mess. It's not going to do any good. We can talk ourselves into or out of anything. Look, everybody's already doing it. It's already a good idea for somebody else. Todd and I were talking this morning. Like I was telling you how talented Todd is. Man, he's like, I don't know what to do because there's so many options. There's so many things and everything. And I was like, well, look, I went to this conference one time where these people were talking about writing books. And after they finished, I went up to the keynote speaker. He's the head of a publisher in Nashville. Okay, this is the right guy. I said, look, there's nothing new under the sun. So how's a Christian publisher get people to write new books? He said, they're saying the same thing, but nobody will say it the way that you say it. So there's nothing new under the sun. They're going to say and regurgitate the same things over and over again, but nobody's going to say it the way that you'll say it. And the way that you'll say it will influence people that nobody else will influence. And so there would be a market for your book. And so, hey, I say unto you, friends, nobody can do it like you can do it. And nobody can say it the way that you can say it. And nobody can live this life the way that you can live it. Nobody has the sphere of influence that you have. All right? Nobody has quite the same amount of energy and interests, experiences, DNA, resources about them, motivations to do exactly what you have. Okay? And so you don't need to be Moses. You need to be you. And when they get to heaven, they won't ask you why you weren't Moses. They're going to ask you why you were not you. And you can be you better than you can be Moses. But Moses didn't get a lot of credit by writing stuff down in a book. He didn't get a credit by just thinking a bunch of stuff. He was doing the stuff. He was doing the work, right? We don't think about Moses. We're like, what a great thinker. What a great, such ideation came from Moses. No, man, it's like that guy spread his staff out and it parted waters. He physically did that stuff and it worked that way. Who's to say that if we don't actualize and start actually doing stuff, that our little dream does become something like that? Who's to say? Man, the world's just trying to shut us down. Everything's trying to shut us down, close us down, suppress us, keep us down. At the end of it, we're closing our Christian books and we're just deciding to go with what the world's got going on, just because it seems like people are listening. But I think, friends, what we ought to do in this room, what Christians are supposed to do, is we're supposed to dig down to the taproot, right? To that root, the stuff that brought us into the faith, the stuff that's kept us here all this time, like the meat and potatoes of the faith, of love and grace, kindness, of forgiveness, reconciliation, redemption, of creation being brought back into how it was supposed to be, and looking around the world and say there's a bunch of wrong and we want to make this stuff right. We want to right the wrongs. We want to be agents of good, right? Like just trying to do that. Like I'm just going to try to make the world better than I found it. That's a very Jewish thing to do. Like I'm going to go and whatever it was, if the buggy is not right, I'm going to take it. And it was in the middle of the parking lot. I'm going to take it. I'm going to put it in the buggy thing. I made the world better. This is a Christian ethic. And I think when these things are actualized and we're done, people are like, why did the guy take the buggy? It's pouring rain. I mean, doesn't he know that there's people that need to be employed and it gives people jobs to take the money? Like, leave it out there. No, man, like, put it back where it was. Make the world better. You know? I start to feel like these action points start to matter and people it starts to do something. And I think people start to pay attention. And in some ways, God uses them the most. I'll stop with this one. There's a guy named George Mueller. You guys don't know George Mueller. He's famous. You ought to read his autobiography. I've bought George Mueller's autobiography and given it away more times than any other book I have. Okay, so get George Mueller's autobiography. It'll cost you $3 or $4 in a Goodwill somewhere because it's like a forgotten about book. This man was a real man. He lived in England. He decided he would never ask anybody for anything. He would only ask God. And he decided that he would only do things that God cared about. So he quit caring about things that didn't matter. And he said, and so he looked for things in the scripture that God cared about. Well, God cares about justice. God cared about orphans and widows. And he found this place that said that true religion, is in the book of James, is to care for orphans and widows. And that this is a spotless and like it's like a perfect religion. So he says, you know what? I'll put my foot on that. I'm going to care for these orphans. They're a bunch of orphans. So he starts caring for orphans. This is something that God says he cares about. So it didn't even take any faith. He's like, God said it, so I'm going to do it. And so his autobiography is how the needs of these orphans were met over the course of his entire life. He never asked anybody for his needs, but he kept a record of the needs being met. And every day for his whole life, to the dollar, to the exact need, things would happen. Now you can't call that coincidence, can you? He did it. Well, guess how George Mueller came to the faith? He saw a nurse who took her lunch break and she got down on her knees and prayed before she ate her meal. And it was at a public place and it was a public park. That was it. He couldn't believe that this woman had such devotion that without anybody watching, she would turn around, get on the park bench, get on her knees, and do a simple prayer before she ate her meals at midday. And she got back from her knees and she sat down, she ate her lunch quietly. He thought, who does that? Like, what is in it? What makes a person do that? I don't know. But I think God does that. So who influences somebody like George Mueller? Just a regular person who's doing the work. Just a regular person who's actualizing their faith. Just a person who's like not cleaning their room and their heart and not making all these excuses for why they can't do it or it's too hard or like we're really not supposed to. It's all metaphorical. No, they're like, I can't do everything. I can't do most of it, but I can do this. I can do this. So, like James' passage, if you see somebody who is in need and you have the means to help them, but instead you start spouting off this religious trash, well, don't expect anybody to believe you because they don't even think that the God is good. And they don't have any real reason to believe that God is good. If you put yourself in the place of somebody that's poor, they're backed into a corner, all right? And they're acting crazy because they are crazy because you'd be crazy too if you were backed into a corner, okay? Anybody gets backed into a corner, they're going to be crazy. Look, let this whole world go to hell and everything get bad. Your knives and guns will be out. You'll be fighting for your kid's life and you'll be killing you don't care. We have this animal primitive tendency within us, okay? Always. Don't think it's not there. It's there, right? Oh my gosh, I got to quit. What am I doing? What am I talking about? Yeah. Sorry. But let's be doers. I think, I think we enjoy the Christian mindset, the privilege of the Christian mindset, friends, and we might be fooling ourselves, I guess. If you can get all the feelings and all the warm and fuzzies, but never have to do any of the work, that's a perverted version. That's like a pornography of you know what I mean? Like, it's kind of a fake thing. And I don't know. It seems like in a world, in an America where 96% say they're Christians, I think we're on to the fake thing. And I think it might come right down to as simple as where reality meets and where people actually do versus just think about it and talk about it. We're not just a think tank. We're supposed to be more than a think tank. At best, we're supposed to be a praxis where we come in here and we think about it, then we go out and put it into practice, and then we go out from the practice and we bring our practice back and we think about the things we've learned from the practice and we think about it again and we go back out. Praxis is cyclical and it's always self-improving. That's how it's supposed to be. We're not actuaries. We're not paid just to think about and give commentary to the world. That's why the Christian book industry exists. And I hope that you read none of them. Anyway, that's my thinking and preaching today. I'm sorry if it went a little wild and all over the place, but it's going to be slow traffic getting to the buffet today, too. It's raining outside. And you guys came here, so I figured you wanted to get full. So here you have it. You got all of it from me. Thanks for listening. Let me pray, and we'll be done. God, I just want to say I'm preaching to myself. God, you and I both know. And so I don't want anybody need to tell me how petty and how slanted my faith is, how self-serving it is, how really in a lot of ways all my devotion has just been to get an edge in the world. Really, my devotion to you has been out of fear that I would mess it up. A lot of my commitment to you has been about me and the benefits that you would offer. And so I can't think too good about my approach, God. But you know that we're dust. You know that we're like sheep. You have pity on us. And so you see through that. And I'm grateful, God, that you take our whole lives. It's a whole process of developing and helping us. And God, we have to hear this message often, but we go a long way in one direction only to realize that we maybe had been missing the point, that we were doing things to try to get something done, but it was having the opposite effect. And now, God, as we look across our culture, we see a church culture that is in decline. We've lost credibility. And now people, not even do they not listen to us anymore, but they don't want to listen. They don't want to hear anything. And so I have to shut up, God. And there's enough talking being done, but work to be done. And how could we do that work just to put one foot in front of the other? Just maybe to distill the 2 or 3 principles that we think that we've gotten from your New Testament and just deploy those 3 principles. God, it doesn't even matter. I pray that we would all put one principle, one Christian principle as maybe the thing to work on this week, an action plan where it's action, where it's something that is tangible, that our spouse or our kids or our coworkers could feel the difference. God, our goal could be that in 2 weeks they would ask, what is different? Why are you being this way? We need something that will matter, God. We want to be relevant. We want the purpose, all the things that Christianity promises us as we join in your cause. But it has to be your cause, and it has to be about you, and it has to be your way. And it has to be your means. And your means, God, is not that Christians make good Christian shoes, but they just make good shoes. And not that we create new Christian cultures and new subcultures and new labels for Christianity, but that we just are the best types of people. And that we just have quality work about us, and we have integrity, and people say, wow, I can believe what they say. And I trust what they're doing here. I trust their motives here. And when we move to the neighborhood, people will be glad. Christians have moved in. This is a good thing to celebrate. So God, regardless of how everybody else is, how everybody else is doing things, regardless of what we're seeing and hearing in our culture, God, could we be true to the convictions that you've put in us? Each of us in this room has got years and years of research, years of experience with you, years, lots on the cutting room floor, God, in our hearts. So we're informed. We're informed. We know what to do. We know what to do, God. Just give us the guts and the courage and maybe the motivation today to go out and say, yes, I'll do that. I want to be remembered as somebody who did this, who represented this, who stood up for this, who was not hypocritical when it came to the needs that they met around them. We cannot solve every need. We cannot solve every problem. But there are needs and problems around us, each of us today, that we can solve. And that we can be a part of those solutions. And man, maybe this is what this is all for, is to get us on that train today. And shoot, collectively, we could do a lot of good in Columbus, Mississippi. And wouldn't that be something? I think that's what we all want, God. So motivate us, Lord. Do the things that only you can do in our hearts. And this is our prayer in Christ's name. Amen. Friends, thanks for being here. I'm sorry I went long. We're 2 minutes after. But hey, it's all good. We don't have Wednesday night this week. We're off, so it's all good there. Don't get blown away or flooded away or anything like that. That's it. Peace. Oh, and we got the Tennessee Williams things happening. You guys weren't aware. We didn't even acknowledge that that's happening. Peace.